Hello, welcome back to chapter 2 of Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, the first book of the Farseer trilogy. Okay, I don't know if I have to jump in immediately because I do. Okay, wait. I do have a few things to say. Okay, first of all, I'm having troubles with screen recording on my iPad. It's not super serious, but basically I'd record for 30 minutes, give or take, and then when I stop the recording, it only saves 2 minutes, which is annoying, but it's fine. This morning I did it with 10-minute segments, and that worked fine. So yeah, I don't know, depending on how I feel in a couple of hours, if I how do you say it, synchronous för if I'm up to it, if I'm up to trying to record things again on my iPad, I'm gonna do that. But maybe I'm just going to switch to a computer, because that would be easier storage-wise as well. And yeah, it'll make the whole process a bit faster, I think, instead of recording, splicing everything on iMovie, and then having to save the iMovie again to my iPad. And it's always you need to have 5 GB free to save this, and it's so stupid, because why is it so big? But it's fine. That's the other reason I want to do it on a computer, because more space to fuck around with. But yeah, anyway, let's actually do the chapter. Oh right, so yeah, I'm not sure what you're going to be seeing on the screen today. It might be fieldrunners. I sincerely hope it's fieldrunners. If it's not fieldrunners, I'm trying to think what I'll want to play in 3 hours time, because at the moment I'm kind of in the mood for swords and sandals, or there's this penguin diner game that's fun, but it gets boring really quickly. Otherwise maybe I'll just play a papa's game, because that's fun. I don't want to play a food game. I want to play swords and sandals or fieldrunners. You know what? It's not my problem. I can think about it in a couple of hours. Yeah. Anyway, let's jump into this chapter. Wait, just take a little sip. Okay. My door is open to the outside world, so there might be sounds of people working down below, and yeah, I don't know, sometimes it's noisy, sometimes it isn't. At the moment it's peaceful. I don't know, it's a Wednesday morning, so yeah, okay. Anyway, yeah, chapter 2, New Boy. Oh, right. The first chapter ended with Fitz just calling himself a catalyst, which okay. Okay, chapter 2, New Boy. This first part is in italics. I'll tell you guys when it stops. There are many legends about Taker, the first out islander to claim Buckkeep as the first duchy and the founder of the royal line. One is that the raiding voyage he was on was his first and only foray out from whatever cold, harsh island had bore him. It is said that upon seeing the timbered fortifications of Buckkeep, he had announced, "If there's a fire and a meal there, I shan't be leaving soon." And there was, and he didn't. Okay, italics end. Okay, I'm sorry for that voice. Okay, so it's just normal Fitz talking now. Okay. But family rumour says that he was a poor sailor, made sick by the heaving water and saltfish rations that other out-islanders throve upon. He and his crew had been lost for days upon the water, and he had not managed to seize Buckheap and make it his own. And if he had not managed to seize Buckheap and make it his own, his crew would have drowned him. Nevertheless, the old tapestry in the great hall shows him as a well-thewed stalwart, grinning fiercely over the prow of his vessel as his oarmen propel him toward an ancient Buckheap of logs and poorly dressed stone. Buckheap had begun its existence as a defensible position on a navigable river at the mouth of a bay with an excellent anchorage. Some petty land chief, whose name has been lost in the mists of history, saw the potential for controlling trade on the river and built the first stronghold there. Ostensibly, he had built it to defend both river and bay from the out-islander raiders who came every summer to plunder up and down the river. What he had not reckoned on were the raiders that infiltrated his fortifications by treachery. The towers and walls became their toehold. They moved their occupations and domination up the river and, rebuilding his timber fort into towers and walls of dressed stone, finally made Buckheap the heart. Sorry, there's like noise down. I think I'm gonna move, actually. Yeah, okay. Okay. Let's go to my room. It might be... Yeah, it's a bit more quiet. We also lose like the echoey effects. Okay, and it means I can lie in bed and read, which is nice, because it's cold. Okay. Ooh. Okay, okay, where am I gonna put... Okay, I think I'm gonna put my phone here. Everything sounds muffled at the moment. Wait, no, I can't like lie back. Okay, wait, okay, I think this should be good. Where were we? Okay. Okay, to whoever's listening, I really hope this feels like I'm reading you a bedtime story, because it feels like I'm reading a bedtime story to like my little cousin or something. Okay. Anyway. Okay, rebuild. Okay. Okay. Rebuilding his timber fort towers into walls of dressed stone finally made Buckheap the heart of the First Duchy, and eventually the capital of the Kingdom of the Six Duchies. The ruling house of the Six Duchies, the Farseers, were descended from those out-islanders. They had, for several generations, kept up their ties with out-islanders, making courting voyages and returning home with plump, dark brides of their own folk. And so the blood of the out-islanders still ran strong in the royal lines and the noble houses, producing children with black hair and dark eyes and muscled, stocky limbs. And with those attributes went a predilection for the skill. Ooh, the skill! And all the dangers and weaknesses inherent in such blood. I had my share of that heritage too. But my first experience of Buckheap held nothing of history or heritage. I knew it only as an end place for a journey, a panorama of noise and people, carts and dogs and buildings and twisting streets that led finally to an immense stone stronghold on the cliffs that overlooked the city sheltered below it. Burich's horse was wary, and his hooves slipped on the often slimy cobblestones of the city streets. I held on grimly to his belt, too weary and aching even to complain. I craned my head up once to stare at the tall grey towers and walls of the keep above us. Even in the unfamiliar warmth of the sea breeze, it looked chill and forbidding. Shouldn't it be foreboding? I don't know. Okay, anyway. I leaned my forehead against his back and felt ill in the brackish iodine smell of the immense water. And that was how I came to Buckkeep. Burich had quarters over the stables, not far from the mews. It was there he took me, along with the hounds and Chivalry's hawk. He saw to the hawk first, for it was sadly bedraggled from the trip. The dogs were overjoyed to be home and were suffused with a boundless energy that was very annoying to anyone as wary as I. Nosy bowled me over 6 times before I could convey to his thick-skulled hound's mind that I was weary and half sick and in no mood for play. He responded as any pup would, by seeking out his former littermates and immediately getting himself into a semi-serious fight with one of them that was quelled by a shout from Burich. Chivalry's man he might be, but when he was at Buckkeep, he was the master for hounds, hawks, and horses. His own beast seemed to, he proceeded to walk through the stables, surveying all that had been done or left undone in his absence. Stable boys, grooms, and falconers appeared as if by magic to defend their charges from any criticisms. I trotted at his heels for as long as I could keep up. It was only when I finally surrendered and sank wearily onto a pile of straw that he appeared to notice me. A look of irritation and then great weariness passed across his face. "Here, you, Cobb, take young Fitz there to the kitchens and see that he's fed, and then bring him back up to my quarters." Cobb was a short, dark dog boy, perhaps 10 years old, who had just been praised over the health of a litter that had been whelped in Burich's absence. Moments before he had been basking in Burich's approval. Now his grin faltered, and he looked at me dubiously. We regarded one another as Burich moved off down the line of stalls with his entourage? I think it's entourage. No, but I always say entourage. Entourage of nervous caretakers. Then the boy shrugged and went into a half-crouch to face me. "Are you hungry then, Fitz? Shall we go find you a bite?" he asked invitingly, in exactly the same tone he had used to coax his puppies out where Burich could see them. I nodded, relieved that he expected no more from me than from a puppy, and I followed him. He looked back often to see if I were keeping up. No sooner were we outside the stables than Nosy came frolicking up to join me. The hound's evident affection for me raised me in Cobb's estimation, and he continued to speak to both of us in short, encouraging phrases, telling us there was food just ahead. "Come along now. No, don't go off sniffing after that cat. Come along now. There's some good fellows." The stables had been bustling, with Verity's men putting up their horses and gear, and Burich finding fault with all that had not been done up to his standards in his absence. But as we drew closer to the inner keep, the foot traffic increased. Folk brushed by us on all manner of errands, a boy carrying an immense slab of bacon on his shoulder, a giggling cluster of girls, arms heavy with stewing reeds and heather, a scowling old man with a basket of flopping fish, and 3 young women in motley and bells, their voices ringing as merrily as their chimes. My nose informed me that we were getting closer to the kitchens, but the traffic increased proportionately until we drew near a door with a veritable crush of people going in and out. Cobb stopped, and Nosy and I paused behind him, noses working appreciatively. He regarded the press of folk at the door and frowned to himself. "Place is packed. Everyone's getting ready for the welcoming feast tonight, for Verity and Regal. Anyone has come into Buckkeep for it, and word spread fast about chivalry ducking out of the kingship. All the dukes have come or sent a man to counsel about it. I heard even the Shurda sent someone, to be sure chivalry's treaties will be honoured if chivalry is no longer about." He halted, suddenly embarrassed, but whether it was because he was speaking of my father to the cause of his abdication, or because he was addressing a puppy and a 6-year-old, as if they had intelligence, I am not sure. He glanced about, reassessing the situation. "Wait here," he told us finally. "I'll slip in and bring something out for you. Less chance of me getting stepped on or caught. Now stay." And he reinforced his command with a firm gesture of his hand. I backed up to a wall and crouched down there, out of traffic's way, and Nosy sat obediently beside me. I watched admiringly, as Cobb approached the door and slipped between the cluster of folk, eeling smoothly into the kitchens. With Cobb out of sight, the more general populace claimed my attention. Largely, the folk that passed us were serving people and cooks, with a scattering of minstrels and merchants and livery folk. I watched them come and go with a wary curiosity. I had already seen too much that day to find them of great interest. Almost more than food, I desired a quiet place away from all this activity. I sat flat on the ground, my back against the sun-warmed wall of the keep, and put my forehead on my knees. Nosy leaned against me. Nosy's stick tail beating against the earth roused me. I lifted my face from my knees to perceive a tall pair of boots before me. My eyes travelled up rough leather pants, over a coarse wool shirt to a shaggy, bearded face thatched with pepper-grey hair. The man staring down at me balanced a small keg on one shoulder. "You the bastard, hey?" I had heard the word more often to know. I had heard the word often enough to know it meant me, without grasping the fullness of its meaning. I'm just gonna read that again. Okay, I had heard the word often enough to know it meant me, without grasping the fullness of its meaning. I nodded slowly. The man's face brightened with interest. "Hey," he said loudly, no longer speaking to me, but to the folk coming and going. "Here's the bastard, stiff as a stick, chivalry's byblow. Looks a fair bit like him, don't you say? Who's your mother, boy?" To their credit, most of the passing people continued to come and go, with no more than a curious stare at the 6-year-old sitting by the wall. But the cask man's questions was evidently of great interest, for more than a few heads turned, and several tradesmen who had just exited from the kitchen drew nearer to hear the answer. Okay, pause. Okay, I'm back. Okay, I just listened to the last few minutes, and do I read really slow? Is that an issue? Maybe I should put it in 2 times speed, just everything. No, but that might sound weird, and then it's not really a bedtime story anymore, is it? But yeah, anyway, it's about 3-4 hours late. No, I think it's exactly 3 hours, because okay, so it was 11:20 when I recorded that, right? and now it's like 14:12. So yeah, it's like almost exactly 3 hours later. Yeah. I did get in the mood for swords and sandals, but I'm out of the mood now because I got killed and it was quite dumb. And it's only because like the map in Swords and Sandals, the map has a limit that it doesn't go very far, and I got like pushed to the like left side, and then I couldn't like get past the it's like one of the champions, he's like a ninja, and I couldn't get past him, and he just like kept hitting me, and like my character is a charisma build, right? So obviously I don't have like a weapon or like any defense stuff. It's just me and like shouting, my charisma, you know. But yeah, anyway, if I remember correctly, the video that's recorded for that is like 22 minutes, and so as I'm talking, that should be happening now, I think. So spoiler alert, I guess. But yeah, anyway, that was devastating. And yeah, I think also I figured out how to do stuff. I just have to delete everything on my iPad and it's like totally fun. Also, I have to save things to files and not to like just the photo library. That helps. So yeah, anyway, I'm just gonna keep playing Fieldrunners because that's fun and I like it, and I'm in the mood for it. So I think the next clip that I'm gonna add to this video is going to be Fieldrunners, most likely. But yeah, let's continue reading. Also, we're only on page. Okay, we're on page 5 of the chapter, and that took us like, I'm not gonna say 19 minutes because I have been talking for like lots of those minutes. So I'm gonna say it's like 15 minutes for like 5 pages, which that's a lot. And this chapter still has, I think, 15 or like 20 pages to go. So yeah, I don't know what to do. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'm sure it's fine. Okay, anyway, so Fitz, he's being cornered by like some guy, and okay, and I'm gonna try talking a bit faster. Okay, and several tradesmen who had just exited from the kitchen drew nearer to hear the answer. But I did not have an answer. Mother had been mother, and whatever I had known of her was already fading. Skill burn. So I made no reply, but only stared up at him. "Hey, what's your name then, boy?" And turning to his audience, he confided, "I heard he ain't got no name. No high-flown royal name to shape him, nor even a cottage name to scold him by. That right, boy? You got a name?" The group of onlookers was growing. A few showed pity in their eyes, but none interfered. Some of what I was feeling passed to Nosy, who dropped over onto his side and showed his belly in supplication, while thumping his tail in that ancient canine signal that always means, "I'm only a puppy, I cannot defend myself, have mercy." Had they been dogs, they would have sniffed me over and then drawn back, but humans have no such inbred courtesies. So, when I didn't answer, the man drew a step nearer and repeated, "You got a name, boy?" I stood slowly, and the wall that had been warm against my back a moment ago was now a chill barrier to retreat. At my feet, Nosy squirmed in the dust on his back and let out a pleading whine. "No," I said softly, and when the man made as if to lean closer to hear my words, "No!" I shouted, and repelled at him, while crabbing sideways along the wall. I saw him stagger a step backwards, losing his grip on his cask so that it fell to the cobbled path and cracked open. No one in the crowd could have understood what had happened. I certainly didn't. For the most part, folk laughed to see a grown man cower back from a child. In that moment, my reputation for both temper and spirit were made. For before nightfall the tale of the bastard standing up to his tormentor was all over the town. Nosy scrabbled to his feet and fled with me. I had one glimpse of Cobb's face, taut with confusion as he emerged from the kitchen, pies in hands, and saw Nosy and me flee. Had he been Burich, I probably would have halted and trusted my safety to him. But he was not, and so I ran, letting Nosy take the lead. We fled through the trooping servants, just one more small boy and his dog racing about in the courtyard, and Nosy took me to what he obviously regarded as the safest place in the world. Far from the kitchen and the inner keep was a hollow Vixen had scraped out under a corner. A hollow Vixen had scraped out under a corner of a rickety outbuilding where sacks of peas and beans were stored. Here Nosy had been whelped, in total defiance of Burich, and here she had managed to keep her pups hidden for almost 3 days. Burich himself had found her there. His smell was the first human smell Nosy could recall. It was a tight squeeze to get under the building, but once within, the den was warm and dry and semi-dark. Nosy huddled close to me, and I put my arm around him. Hidden there, our hearts soon eased down from their wild thumpings, and from calmness we passed into the deep, dreamless sleep reserved for warm spring afternoons and puppies. I came awake shivering hours later. It was full dark, and the teeniest warmth of the early spring day had fled. Nosy was awake as soon as I was, and together we scraped and slithered out of the den. There was a high night sky over Buckkeep, with stars shining bright and cold. The smell of the bay was stronger, as if the day smells of men and horses and cooking were temporary things that had to surrender each night to the ocean's power. We walked down deserted pathways, through exercise yards and past granaries and winepress. All was still and silence. As we drew closer to the inner keep, I saw torches still burning, and heard voices still raised in talk. But it all seemed tired somehow. The last vestiges of revelry winding down before dawn came to lighten the skies. Still, we skirted the inner keep by a wide margin, having had enough of people. I found myself following Nosy back to the stables. As we drew near the heavy doors, I wondered how we would get in, but Nosy's tail began to wag wildly as we got closer, and then even my poor nose picked up Burich's scent in the dark. He rose from the wooden crate he'd been seated on by the door. "There you are," he said soothingly. "Come along then, come on." And he stood and opened the heavy doors for us to let us in. We followed him through the darkness, between rows of stalls, past grooms and handlers put up for the night in the stables, and then past our own horses and dogs and the stable boys who slept amongst them. And then to the staircase that climbed to the wall, which separated the stables from the mews. We followed Burich up its creaking wooden treads, and then he opened another door. Dim yellow light from a guttering candle on a table blinded me temporarily. We followed Burich into a slant-roofed chamber that smelled of Burich and leather and oils and salves and herbs that were part of his trade. He shut the door firmly behind us, and as he came past us to kindle a fresh candle from the nearly spent one on the table, I smelled the sweetness of wine on him. The light spread, and Burich seated himself on a wooden chair by the table. He looked different, dressed in fine, thin cloth of brown and yellow, with a bit of silver chain across his jerkin. He put his hand out, palm up on his knee, and Nosy went to him immediately. Burich scratched his hanging ears and then thumped his ribs affectionately, grimacing at the dust that rose from his coat. "You're a fine pair, the two of you," he said, speaking more to the pup than to me. "Look at you, filthy as beggars. I lied to my king today for you. First time ever in my life I've done that. Appears as if chivalry's fall from grace will take me down as well. Told him you were washed up and sound asleep, exhausted from your journey. He was not pleased he would have to wait to see you, but luckily for us, he had weightier things to handle. Chivalry's abdication has upset a lot of lords. Some are seeing it as a chance to push for an advantage, and others are disgruntled to be cheated of a king they admired. Shrewd's trying to calm them all. He's letting it be noised about that Verity was the one who negotiated with the Shurda this time. Those as will believe that shouldn't be allowed to walk about on their own, but they came to look at Verity anew and wonder if and when he'd be their next king, and what kind of a king he would be. Chivalry's throwing it over and leaving for Withywoods had stirred up all of 6 duchies as if he'd poked a stick in a hive. Byrrich lifted his eyes from Nosey's eager face. "Well, Fitz? Guess you got a taste of it today. Fair scared poor Hobb to death, you running off like that. Now, are you hurt? Did anyone rough you up? I should have known there would be those who would blame all that stir on you. Come here then, come on." When I hesitated, he moved over to a pallet of blankets made up near the fire and patted it invitingly. "See, there's a place here for you already, and there's bread and meat on the table, for both of you." His words made me aware of the covered plate on the table. Flesh, Nosy senses confirmed, and I was suddenly full of the smell of meat. Byrrich laughed at our rush to the table, and silently approved how I shared a portion out to Nosy before filling my own jaws. We ate to repletion, but Byrrich had not underestimated how hungry a pup and a boy would be after a day of misadventures. And then, despite our long nap earlier, the blankets so close to the fire were suddenly immensely inviting. Bellies full, we curled up with the flames baking our backs and slept. When we awoke the next day, the sun was well risen and Byrrich already gone. Nosy and I ate the heel of last night's loaf and gnawed the leftover bones clean before we descended from Byrrich's quarters. No one challenged us or appeared to take any notice of us. Outside, another day of chaos and revelry had begun. The keep was, if anything, more swollen with people. Their passage stirred the dust, and their mixing voices were an overlay to the shushing of the wind and the more distant muttering of the waves. Nosy drank it all in, every scent, every sight, every sound. The doubled sensory impact dizzied me. As I walked, I gathered from snatches of conversation that our arrival had coincided with some spring rite of merriment and gathering. Chivalry's abdication was still the main topic, but it did not prevent the puppet shows and jugglers from making every corner a stage for their antics. At least one puppet show had already incorporated chivalry's fall from grace into its bawdy comedy, and I stood anonymous in the crowd and puzzled over dialogue about sowing the neighbors' fields that had the adults roaring with laughter. I don't get it. Okay. But very soon the crowds and the noise became oppressive to both of us, and I let Nosy know I wished to escape it all. We left the keep, passing out of the thick-walled gate past guards, intent upon flirting with the merrymakers as they came and went. One more boy and dog leaving on the heels of a fishmongering family were nothing to notice. And with no better distraction in sight, we followed the family as they wound their way down the streets away from the keep and towards the town of Buckkeep. We dropped further and further behind them as new sense demanded that Nosy investigate and then urinate at every corner, until it was just him and me wandering the city. Buckheap then was a windy, raw place. The streets were steep and crooked, with paving stones that rocked and shifted out of place under the weight of passing carts. The wind blasted my inland nostrils with the scent of beached kelp and fish guts, while the keening of the gulls and the seabirds were an eerie melody above the rhythmic shushing of the waves. The town clings to the rocky black cliffs, much like limpets and barnacles cling to the pilings and quays that venture out into the bay. The houses were of stone and wood, with the more elaborate wooden ones built higher upon the rocky face and cut more deeply into it. Buckheap town was relatively quiet compared to the festivity and crowds up in the keep. Neither of us had the sense or experience to know the waterfront town was not the best place for a 6-year-old and a puppy to wander. Nosy and I explored eagerly, sniffing our way down Baker Street and through a near-deserted market and then along the warehouses and boat sheds that were the lowest levels of the town. Here the water was close, and we walked on wooden piers as often as we did on sand and stone. Business here was going on as usual, with little allowance for the carnival atmosphere up in the keep. Ships must dock and unload, as the rising and falling of the tides allow, and those who fish for a living must follow the schedules of the finned creatures, not those of men. We soon encountered children, some busy at the lesser tasks of their parents' crafts, but some idlers like ourselves. I fell in easily with them, with little need for introductions or any of the adult pleasantries. Most of them were older than I, but several were as young or younger. None of them seemed to think it odd I should be out and about on my own. I was introduced to all the important sights of the city, including the swollen body of a cow that had washed up at the last tide. Interesting, okay. We visited a new fishing boat. It feels like a random thing to mention. Okay, let's move on. We visited a new fishing boat under construction at a dock littered with curling shavings and strong-smelling pitch spills. A fish-smoking rack, left carelessly untended, furnished a midday repast for half a dozen of us. If the children I was with were more ragged and boisterous than those who passed at their chores, I did not notice. And had anyone told me I was passing the day with a pack of beggar brats, denied entrance to the keep because of their light-fingered ways, I would have been shocked. At the time, I knew only that it was suddenly a lively and pleasant day, full of places to go and things to do. There were a few youngsters, larger and more rambunctious, who would have taken the opportunity to set the newcomer on his ear had Nosy not been with me and showing his teeth at the first aggressive shove. But as I did not show any signs of wanting to challenge their leadership, I was allowed to follow. I was suitably impressed by all of their secrets, and I would venture that by the end of the long afternoon, I knew the poorer quarter of the town better than many who had grown up above it. I was not asked for a name, but simply was called New Boy. The others had names as simple as Dick or Kerry, or as descriptive as Netpicker and Nosebleed. Nosebleed! Okay, wait, I have to make a note. Okay, circling her name, and I'm gonna make like a little arrow, and I'm gonna be like, ho me fun har. Okay, I don't like Nosebleed. Her actual name is Molly, but no, that she is Nosebleed. Yeah, she is. Okay. I don't like her. she's fine, I guess. She's okay. She's like, I don't like her. Okay, anyway. Okay. The last might have been a pretty little thing in better circumstances. Now you see, okay, this is why I don't like Molly. First of all, the first thing Fitz, tells us of Molly is that she might have been pretty if she'd been in, better circumstances. Okay, you know the first thing he says about... I shouldn't give spoilers, but Basically, okay, there's this other girl. You meet her later, right? And you meet her before Fitz meets her. And when you meet her the first time, everyone calls her ugly, and they're like, she's not really an attractive woman, and she's a bit plain, and yada yada yada. And then later, when Fitz meets her for the first time, you know what he says about her? He's like, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And you know what? He's just... Fuck Molly. That's what. I don't like her. She's a bully. She's not nice to Fitz. I like her as a person, but I don't want her to be with Fitz. Not that she's going to be with Fitz, because... Okay, she's going to be with Fitz, but it's not a big spoiler, because she's not a big... Sorry for the spoiler. But yeah, anyway, I think he should be with a girl who he said is really pretty. But yeah. Anyway, I'm sure I'll talk about it a bunch more as we continue through these books. Anyway, or as descriptive as Netpicker and Nosebleed. The last might have been a pretty little thing in better circumstances. She was a year or two older than I, but very outspoken and quick-witted. She got into one dispute with a big boy of 12, but she showed no fear of his fists, and her sharp-tongued taunts soon had everyone laughing at him. She took her victory calmly and left me awed by her toughness, but the bruises on her face and thin arms were layered in shades of purple, blue, and yellow, while a crust of dried blood below one ear belied her name. Even so, Nosebleed was a lively one, her voice shriller than the gulls that wheeled above us. Late afternoon found Kerry, Nosebleed, and me on a rocky shore beyond the net mender's racks, with Nosebleed teaching me to scour the rocks for tight-clinging shields. These she levelled off expertly with a sharpened stick. She was showing me how to use a nail to pry the chewy inmates out of their shells when another girl hailed us with a shout. The neat blue cloak that blew around her and the leather shoes on her feet set her apart from my companions. Nor did she come to join our harvesting, but only came close enough to call, "Molly, Molly is looking for you, high and low. He waked up near sober an hour ago and took to calling you names as soon as he found you gone, and the fire out." A look of mixed defiance and fear passed over Nosebleed's face. "Run away, Kidney, but take my thanks with you. I'll remember you next time the tides bear the kelp crab's beds." Kidney ducked her head in brief acknowledgement and immediately turned and hastened back the way she had come. "Are you in trouble?" I asked Nosebleed when she did not go back to turning over stones for shields. "Trouble?" She gave a snort of disdain. "That depends. If my father can stay sober long enough to find me, I might be in it for a bit. More than likely he'll be drunk enough tonight that not a one of whatever he hurls at me will hit. More than likely," she repeated firmly, when Kerry opened his mouth to object to this. And with that, she turned back to the rocky beach and our search for Shield. Okay, I do like Molly. I do like her. I don't want her anywhere, like, near Fitz. Like, I want him to stay away, and I want him to stay in Buckkeep, the keep, the actual keep. I want him to just stay there and never, ever, ever talk to Molly ever again, because she doesn't even do anything bad. Because, like, what's her name? My boyfriend likes Molly, and he's like, no, they love each other. No, I don't like her. No. Okay, anyway. Okay. We were crouched over a many-legged great creature that we found stranded in a tide pool when the crunch of a heavy boot on the barnacled rocks brought all our heads up. With a shout, Kerry fled down the beach, never pausing to look back. Nosy and I sprang back, Nosy crowding against me, teeth bared, bravely as his tail tickled his cowardly... You're 47 minutes already. You're okay. We're on page 33 at the moment, and there's, I think, 47 pages. Yeah, there's 47 pages in this chapter, so I think I'm going to do another 2 parts. But whoop! Yo, we're not. It's not looking good. Okay, this is going to take a lot of Field Runners content. But yeah, anyway. Molly Nosebleed was either not so fast to react or resigned to what was to come. A gangly man caught her a smack on the side of the head. He was a skinny man, red-nosed and raw-boned, so that his fist was like a knot at the end of his bony arm. But the blow was still enough to send Molly sprawling. Barnacles cut into her wind-reddened knees, and when she crabbed aside to avoid the clumsy kick he aimed at her, I winced at the salty sand that packed the new cuts. Ugh. Faithless little muskrat! Didn't I tell you to stay and tend to the dipping? And here I find you mucking about on the beach with the tallow gone hard in the pot. They'll be wanting more tapers up at the keep this night, and what am I to sell them? The 3 dozen I set this morning. That was all you left me wicking for, you drunken old sot. Molly got to her feet and stood bravely, despite her brimming eyes. What was I to do? Burn up all the fuel and keep the tallow soft, so that when you finally gave me wicking, we'd have no way to heat the kettle? The wind gusted, and the man swayed shallowly against it. It brought us a whiff of him, sweat and beer, Nosy informed me sagely. For a moment the man looked regretful, but the pain of his sour belly and aching head hardened him. He stooped suddenly and seized a whitened branch of driftwood. You won't talk to me like that, you wild brat! Down here with the beggar boys, doing knows what, stealing from the smoke racks again, I wadger, and bringing more shame to me. Dare to run, and you'll have it twice when I catch you. I don't like the voice I'm doing. Okay, she must have believed him, for she only cowered as he advanced on her, putting up her thin arms to shield her head, and then seeming to think better of it, and hiding only her face with her hands. I stood transfixed in horror, while Nosy yelped with my terror and wet himself at my feet. I heard the swish of the driftwood knob as the club descended. My heart leapt sideways in my chest, and I pushed at the man, the force jerking out oddly from my belly. He fell, as had the keg man the day before. But this man fell clutching at his chest, his driftwood weapons spinning harmlessly away. He dropped to the sand, gave a twitch that spasmed his whole body, and then went still. Huh? No way. What? No way. I'm just gonna write here, no way. Okay. An instant later, Molly unscrewed her eyes, shrinking from the blow she still expected. She saw her father collapsed on the rocky beach, and amazement emptied her face. She leapt toward him, crying, Papa, are you all right? Please don't die. I'm sorry I'm such a wicked girl. Don't die. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. Heedless of her bleeding knees, she knelt beside him, turning his face so he wouldn't breathe in the sand, and then vainly trying to sit him up. He was going to kill you, I told her, trying to make sense of the whole situation. No, he hits me a bit when I am bad, but he never kill me. And when he is sober and not sick, he cries about it and begs me not to be bad and make him angry. I should take more care not to anger him. Oh, new boy, I think he's dead. Ungrateful brat. I wasn't sure myself, but in a moment he gave an awful groan. Oh, phew! Okay, I thought he killed him. Okay, phew! Okay, I think I'm done for now.